Anybody in private practice, you know that the game is having a book of business of your own. I didn't solve any problem for you. And he said, you did, because you sat and you listened, and you're the first person that really listened to me in a long time, and so I'm grateful for that. Is that there's a disconnect between what companies are saying they collect and what they do with that information. But the reality is, it's just like when you were a teenager, right? Like, oh, no, you better not drink, or you better not do this, or, it's intriguing for people. The book is the Chief Justices. It's about the 17 men that have served as the Chief Justices. It's the Supreme Court is really not advanced or given rights. The Supreme Court was not going to be the solution if you're looking for those things.
This is the Litigator's Edge, the podcast where smart strategy, practical innovation, and real-world experience come together to move litigation forward. Each week, we sit down with attorneys, legal tech leaders, and trusted advisors who are rethinking how great legal work gets done. You'll hear how law firms are building a competitive advantage. These conversations are grounded, insightful, and designed to help you refine how you work and how you win. Here is your host, Aniket Sawant.
Hello, and welcome to today's episode of The Litigator's Edge, the podcast where innovative attorneys reveal the strategies that have transformed their legal practice. My name is Aniket Sawant, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Threadio. My guest today is a seasoned corporate advisor who leverages his unique expertise at the intersection of privacy, insurance, and corporate governance. He serves as a strategic partner to companies, guiding them through complex transactions, our corporate governance, and the management of operational and reputational risk. Our guest is a recognized leader in the legal community, having served as the president of the Chicago Bar Association and also of the National Conference of Bar Presidents. It's my pleasure to welcome Dan Cotter to the podcast. Welcome, Dan, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Perfect. So, Dan, I always like to start by asking each of my guests to share either a fun fact about themselves or a cringe joke. Which will it be, and what is it?
Well, especially in this environment, I'm not a very good joke teller anyway, but cringe jokes probably what makes one cringe these days is open to debate. So it's a fun fact, and I can go ahead and tell you that if you like.
Please go ahead.
Sure. So some people know in the Chicago area, they know for sure, but for about 15 years, I was a competitive powerlifter, held many records, but I turned it into a charitable event back in 2002, lifting lend a hand, and happy to raise more than $350,000 between 2002 and 2019 for disadvantaged communities, mentoring programs. And
so that's a wonderful fact. Wow. Were you doing that as a professional, or were you doing this alongside your academic and professional activities?
Yeah, there's really no professional unless you're really strong. There's a guy from Chicago area that Eddie Cohn is his name, and he's legendary for lifting. You know, those people like Schwarzenegger can make money in bodybuilding, but there's no money in powerlifting. It's all amateur. And one of the reasons I started doing it was one of my buddies from undergraduate. I was about 10 years out of undergraduate, had put on some weight, and he said, why don't you do something like this to keep your mind focused so you have a purpose in the gym? And so for a long time, it was a good purpose to keep me focused and on task. But as you get older, you can't do it anymore. So I've hung up my belt, as they say.
No, that's great. But I mean, and the word purpose has another angle too, which is also that you did it with purpose for the disadvantaged community. So kudos to you for that. That's awesome.
Well, thank you.
All right. So with that, I'll start by saying that every attorney who makes the time to be on this podcast, I regard them as a superhero. And every superhero has an origin story. And you shared a little bit of that through that little fun fact of yours. But can you share a little bit more about your professional origin story and just more broadly how you got to where you are?
Sure. Yeah. My secret sauce was always one of the things that drove me and gave me the benefit to be a lawyer was playing undergraduate college football, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I've talked about in various interviews I've had over the years. Is I started playing football in 8th grade, and then I played 4 years of high school at a major Catholic League powerhouse in the 1980s, Gordon Tech in Chicago. And we went with very good teams. I never started a down of football in 5 years of playing football, and decided that I still wanted to play football, that I had something left in me. One of my coaches had told me that once I found football was fun, that I would enjoy it. And so I went to a small liberal arts college. I started all 37 games. That was an academic and athletic All-American, and received a postgraduate scholarship of the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame Scholar Athlete Award, one of 11 below Division I football players in 1997 to receive one. I got a notice that my time was up, and I went to law school and went to law school at night. But it was that framework, that perseverance, the grit and hard work and determination, especially in the weight room, where I was able to make a difference, to play football in college. But that's really the thing that jettisoned my career, and was the way that I launched into the law. And the rest is history, as they say. And we'll talk about kind of my path, which is an eclectic one. I don't know if I'd recommend it to those in law school or younger lawyers thinking about it, but we'll get into that.
Please, I would love to hear your path.
Yeah. So it's been a long and winding road. I joked at one point that it's like a rock tour. I've been in a number of places. When I graduated from law school, first I was an accountant. My final year I was a paralegal at a large insurance company. I went to a law firm and wanted to be a trial lawyer, and was getting a lot of good experience. The company I had worked for at undergrad, one of the top people in the law department at the time, he asked my former boss when I was coming back, and he said he's not coming back. He left to go to a law firm to practice law, and I helped get him there. So I was a very busy first and second year associate at Lord Bissell. Got a lot of good exposure. It was fortuitous that my first career was accounting, and the day I was admitted to the bar or found out I passed the bar exam, a senior associate came and asked me if I'd passed. He had an expert deposition the next day of an accountant that he wanted me to cover. I covered that, and then because now I had experiences at deposing experts after about 2 days in the job or a couple weeks, very much enjoyed it. But I got invited to go back to the company I worked for during law school for all 4 of those years, and I went back in a non-litigation role, although I overlooked a lot of claims, a lot of litigation anyway. I became Y2K general counsel, became overseer of a lot of other stuff taking place at that time. I spent about 13 and a half years in-house, all in senior roles at insurance companies. And then in 2010, my buddy from Lord Bissell, who was on his own, said, "Hey, you should come over and do all the stuff you're doing, but do it for my clients." It was a great idea. But it was 2010, which was for those youngsters on here listening or watching. The market was pretty bad back then. It was a financial crisis, and most of his clients were in Bermuda and had very limited use for a transactional and regulatory attorney from the U.S. So I spent about 3 years in private practice. Was building a book of business. Was looking to find a bigger platform, and another former partner from Lord Bissell was the CEO of a life insurance company. He wanted to go public, and so he invited me to do that. So I went in-house for about 2.5 years. Trying to take a company public. That's a story, take up a whole hour. It didn't go public. I flew to Boston once. I flew to South Carolina and handled in Boston. I actually was the trial attorney for my in-house employer, and with local counsel. And again, in 2015, I went back to private practice. I've been back in private practice for 10 years. And I know this is a show about litigators. People probably asking, what litigation do I have? I serve as in the last 10 years, I've started doing a lot of arbitration, serving as an arbitrator. But also I handle litigation because a lot of my clients, I serve as outside general counsel, and I pass off the heavy duty lifting and actually going to court and stuff to my colleagues. But do a lot of strategizing, a lot of work on those cases. I've done briefing, so. That's been the long and winding road. The 30 years have gone by in some ways very quickly. Other ways it seems like an eternity. Yeah, so that's kind of the path. One of the things I talk to mentees about all the time, I talk to people when they're considering changing, is if you're giving up private practice, for example, Anybody in private practice, you know that the game is having a book of business of your own. I built that book of business in that second private practice, and then gave it up for 2.5 years. Very hard when you're almost 50 years old to try to recreate, the magic again from the bottle. But knock on wood, there's ebbs and flows, but we're back on an upward trajectory.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Dan. Digging a little bit deeper into your journey, both in-house and then private, and maybe in-house again and then private. So I guess a question would be, what is the most critical lesson you learned sitting in-house that maybe most outside counsel don't understand? And how does that experience change how you deliver legal advice?
A couple things. I tell people the in-house, it's different. It's a lot different in many ways. But the thing you learn very quickly to be successful in the in-house role, I think, as opposed to being an outside where we parachute in, we kind of give advice, either litigation or transactional, or give opinions or whatnot, is that the business people, they don't want a tome on something. They don't want what I refer to as an octopus opinion on the one hand, on the other hand, but
That's great.
turn a page, 42 different risk factor caveats. You have to be pragmatic, and you have to have business acumen. You have to understand how to have a conversation with the business folks. Why? Because unlike in private practice, where they either call or now more and more text or send emails and want an instant response, your office mates are literally your client. And so when they come to your door, it's not like you can just say, I've got other business, I'm in court or whatever. You are beholden to them. So I think it's that. I think one of the things that, again, you need to, which is a bit different, is you need to really understand what is driving the request. Because businesses, they don't necessarily want to be 100% certain of something, but they want to understand, what the risks are and what their risk tolerance is. And finally, what I would say to folks that are interested in in-house work is that it's you get a much more, generally, especially if you're a trusted advisor to the business folks, you have a seat at the table. And so you really understand the context and the full scope. So again, when you're in private practice, even if you haven't had a client for years, when they call or send you something, they say, hey, we got this employee, they want wage an hour, overtime, or whatever it is. You don't know the full context. You don't know what's going on. They don't like that you're asking questions. When you're in-house, if you've been there any length of time, you kind of understand, again, the whole business plan, the mission, purpose, and all the other moving parts. And it really gives you, I think, a better ability to handle those things in a cost-effective and pragmatic manner.
It makes a lot of sense. Taking a step back and looking at your 3-decade career, what are one or two cases or matters that you worked on or people that you worked with that fundamentally changed how you look at the practice of law?
Most of the cases that have kind of really woken me up, because I've been in private practice and most of it's business to business, and so there's real emotions and real needs at risk, but it's an exchange of money in most cases, right? Samsung suing Google or whatever it is, it's an exchange of money. I think the thing that really alerted me again to kind of the bedside manners and everything else is some of the pro bono cases I've had in my career. One case in particular really resonates, or actually a couple of cases. One was a case where a guy's apartment had converted to condominiums, and so now he was getting assessments and stuff. A senior guy had some mental disabilities and came in. He had a big sack of paper. We went through it, and I told him, I said, I really am sorry, but there's nothing. I asked him, did you talk to your attorney? Did the attorney explain these documents? He said, I understand them. And so eventually he figured out a way. He was able to sell his condo and get out and move into other housing. And he came back for a closing thing. And I said, again, I apologize that I didn't solve any problem for you. And he said, you did, because you sat and you listened. And you're the first person that really listened to me in a long time. And so I'm grateful for that. So those cases taught me a lot. I think the Y2K experience taught me, again, when I went in-house, just how everything is really tied to technology, and I've been doing a lot of privacy and cyber, as you made in the introduction, for 30 years. But back then, again, the people that are younger may not realize it, but everybody thought the end of the world was going to happen because no computers would work after 12 a.m. in 1 second on January 1st, 2000. Believe it or not, the programmers were actually smart enough to understand how to do negative math. And it also taught me a lot about time management, just because I was the solo attorney really handling that stuff. There were other people that, of course, it came across their desk, but just the volume of work and being able to, again, explain to everybody from the CEO of the company and the board of directors down to line workers why this was an important issue was a big learning tool for me.
Very cool. Switching gears a little bit and talking about the specific areas within which you practice, right? So specifically, you have three intersecting areas that I can tell: privacy / cybersecurity, insurance, and then corporate governance. So that's an interesting and powerful combination. How did you come to build your career at that intersection, and how does that help you in terms of how you guide clients?
Yeah, and I think when we talked about the path of my 30 years, I think the two instances of in-house counseling for 15 years, they were all of that time was spent at insurance companies. And so just by osmosis or anything else, learning to being able to understand insurance policies and claims and underwriting and the whole 9 yards. I think that was why insurance is part of what I do. And I do it for insurance companies and insurance tangential companies, but I also do it for other clients. I'm helping a client right now try to figure out for her business what it looks like for insurance. And we're talking to brokers and trying to help her and assist her navigate that to make sure that she's adequately covered with her employees, with her liability policies and all that stuff. The privacy and cyber, again, was Y2K. And again, I just by happenstance, I had been doing some work at Lord Bissell, some speaking and writing, was paying attention to it. I asked about it when I got back to CNA, and because I asked, I got put in that role, and then into e-commerce and became the first privacy czar there. The EU Directive on Privacy was out before GDPR. HIPAA came out in the late 90s when I was house, Graham Leach Bliley and privacy. So that intersection. And the same with corporate governance. Corporate governance, because of that in-house, when I've been in private practice in the two later stints, know a lot about corporate governance and about various internal policies and procedures, record retention, privacy, you name it, again, from that experience. And so I've really tried to focus on those three areas because that's what I really know and feel comfortable, whether it's in the insurance arena or not, doing those three things.
Very cool. Given that you've had front row seats to so many remarkable milestones just in the corporate world, whether it's Y2K or HIPAA or some of the other events that have happened, what would you say is the most significant shift you've witnessed in terms of how corporate clients approach and manage risk in general? And then how has the rise of just data everywhere changed the nature of that risk and changed the nature of corporate governance associated with that risk and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you can't go to a seminar or have a conversation anymore without bringing up big data and artificial intelligence. We've been using various forms of it for some time, but it was really more of a static type of thing. And now it's with agentic AI and with generative AI, I think we're really facing a ground shift. I think what's happened is that, if you look at enterprise risk management programs from, say, even a decade ago, cyber and data and privacy probably were on there just because we're in an internet society. But now I would venture to say that the vast majority of companies, it's got to be in their top 2 or 3 things. I mean, maybe it's financial sustainability, HR and employment, and how do you keep employees in this changing environment of work from home and all the other stuff going on. But in 30 years of practice, you really see the kind of change. And I'll give an example. My first career was accounting, and so I graduated in 1988. Had barely seen any spreadsheets. I saw one kind of overhead demonstration my senior year of college, small liberal arts school that I went to. And then I got to CNA Financial, and we were starting to use Lotus 123, and then eventually Excel when Excel took over. It's like WordPerfect became obsolete. Lotus 123 was a great programming tool, but it was just like AI is now, or electronic discovery was when it first started, or online Westlaw and Lexis for lawyers. There was a lot of skepticism of accountants, the people that had been wearing the green shades for a long time and building spreadsheets that were 10 feet wide, manually typing stuff. I mean, it was, there was a lot of skepticism. I think for most businesses that I talk to daily, data has now become such a necessity. I mean, I don't know how you can operate in this day and age. A lot of people say if you don't want to give up privacy or you don't want to be hacked, go offline. I mean, how would you do that? Like, that would mean you don't advertise because there's no phone books anymore. The newspaper doesn't have tons of ads like it used to. So I don't even know how you would, in most cases, do business. And so I think that's the real shift. And the cost has gone down too. So you see, again, people over rely on it. I think one of the pushbacks that more people need to have the conversations with is when it comes to the technology. And I've been asking this for years of all my clients when I was in-house and in private practice. What data are you collecting? Why are you collecting it? And then how are you storing it? And because at the insurance companies I worked at, the underwriters and marketing people were always like, we're going to get more data and then we're going to have better pricing. And then they never were able to do that, right? Because it's so expensive. Imagine even if you could get all the data in the world, if Dan Cotter spends $10 a day at the local 7-Eleven, he's probably buying either cigarettes or beer. So we'll say he's the worst risk. Well, you don't know that, right? I could be buying donuts. I could be buying, a gallon of milk every day. So like I said, I think from an enterprise risk management standpoint, again, if you're not worried about artificial intelligence and the fake stuff it does, but also just deep fakes, overwriting, the amount of data it can process in so little time, and it's getting better and better. I think every 6 months we'll have this. If we had this conversation 6 months from now, it'd probably be a different conversation than it is today in terms of its reliability, in terms of how accurate it is.
Absolutely. Going down that path for a second, for the business owners and executives who are listening, in your experience, Dan, what is the single biggest mistake you see companies making when it comes to managing their privacy and cybersecurity risks in this era of AI and data and regulation and just everything that's going on these days?
I would say there's two. One is not paying attention or not seeking out trusted advisors that are keeping up on the changes. I'm in Chicago, and it's over the last 5 or 6 years, the number of companies that have been sued for Biometric Information Privacy Act violations for not having a policy, not disclosing for their timekeepers has been pretty astonishing. The second mistake I think that they make, and the biggest thing that you see when companies get into trouble, is again either doing things that purely violate the Texas acts or the Colorado or California acts. But the biggest thing that I really find, and if you look at the FTC webpage on cyber and privacy, you'll see this, is that there's a disconnect between what companies are saying they collect and what they do with that information and how they're retaining it, how they forget you, how they're responding to a request, and what they're publicizing out in the public. And so you see a lot of times, you'll see, for example, an application that does geo-tracking of when you go in the grocery store, go into Costco, and you go aisle by aisle, and so they're trying to get data of how people shop so they can put Stan's Donuts in the front of the shop or in front of automotive because everybody goes to automotive every day. And I think there's a real disconnect there. And again, I think there's a real good opportunity for people to look at those things, because if you're doing stuff and you're making it clear, conspicuous, plain English, of what you're collecting, how you're tracking, how you're storing data, you're much less likely, I think, to get in trouble or get noticed from the regulatory body than if you say you're doing something and then it turns out somebody complains. Dan told me that they're not storing my biometric information activity for more than a day, but they've kept 10 years of my biometric data. It's not a very expensive endeavor. Like a lot of things in law, I always advise clients, spend a half hour, an hour having us review something up front, because that's much less than tens of thousands of dollars on the back end once you get sued or you get a regulatory complaint.
Makes sense. Switching gears from data in general to AI. So from a corporate governance perspective, what new duties do you think that boards and executives have when it comes to overseeing their company's use of AI specifically? Now, granted, as you correctly mentioned, 6 months later, this would be a different conversation, but just from where you're seeing the trajectory that you're seeing AI being on today, assuming that trajectory holds for the foreseeable future, how is the industry beginning to look at this, and how should the industry begin to look at underwriting complex AI-driven risks?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge right now is that AI, like any other tool, is a tool, but it's not the end all and be all. We see repeatedly on LinkedIn, if you're on LinkedIn, you don't even have to follow people. It comes in your feed every day. There's another case, large law, big law, small law, judges, experts are all just seemingly not remembering that there's a duty to review the stuff that it spits out. And again, it can be an effective tool, just like electronic discovery was an effective tool. Just like I said, the online Westlaw and Lexis, when it came in the late 90s and really became the thing, instead of going and looking at physical books and trying to find cases that way. It's a good tool, I think, for boardrooms and I think for executives of organizations that are dealing with this. A couple of things. One is you need an effective AI policy. And it can't be, I hear this repeatedly, I hear it at law firms, I hear it at clients of mine, that AI is prohibited. But the reality is, it's just like when you were a teenager, right? Like, you better not drink, or you better not do this, or, it's intriguing for people. Plus, the reality is that anybody that's grown up in the era, by necessity, is using AI. And when you say no AI, then you can't use Google, you can't use LexisNexis, you can't use social media, you can't use anything then, because when you type in a Google search these days, it shows up the AI stuff on the left and other stuff, the sources on the right. So what does not using AI mean? I think what you need to do is be considerate and really have a conversation with your workforce about what they're using it for, and that they have to disclose that they're using it, right? Because that's, I think that's the bottom equalizer, is say that you're using it. And again, in the legal profession, I think we're going to start to see malpractice claims and other things, potentially theft claims, because people will say, you billed us for this time, you said you reviewed the briefs, and yet there's 25 hallucinations in them. So I think from an exposure standpoint, I think those are the biggest things, is, again, having a policy that actually is realistic with what's taking place, recognizing that younger people and older people too, are going to use AI. So it's again, to me, it's like a Google search. It's like, gathering information, but it's the old trust but verify. You need to make sure, everybody needs to make sure that what they're doing is accurate, because even in closed systems, even with Copilot and others, even if I give it something I wrote and say, just look at this and give me guidance. I'll give you a very good example. I was at a retreat this past weekend for the National Conference of Bar Presidents, and the president and one of his friends, a very savvy AI guy, they created a chat bot for us to be able to plan for our committees.
Wow.
And so the chair and vice chairs were sitting together. You punch in the same steps, or 6 steps or whatever, you type in the committee. The thing was given different priorities, even though it was a closed set of just our documents. Top 20 for my colleague and I were totally different. The format was different. The structure was different. And so it's, again, I think that people just need to recognize it's a tool, but it's not all knowing, all powerful.
Got it. You mentioned the National Conference of Bar Presidents. So in addition to your daily practice, you're incredibly active. You were past president of that organization, as also the Chicago Bar Association. You're a podcast co-host. You mentioned you're a mediator. And one thing which I'll touch upon after this, which is that you have an intriguing book on Supreme Court justices. How does How does your deep involvement in all of these different activities and organizations, how does that make you a better professional, a better person?
And part of it is I meet people with different perspectives, different practice areas, and I learn from all of them. I think part of it is just relationship building is something that, again, if you're going to be an effective practitioner in private practice, even in-house, you need to have clientele, you need to have people that trust you and know you. And so that's one of the reasons I do it. I like to give back. I've been fortunate. I've had great mentors, like the person that brought me back to CNA in the late 90s. My first partner at Lord Bissell and Brook, Mark Wilcox, still a friend. I like to give back, but mostly it's an opportunity to get to meet people and think about things that I probably would, if I just stayed and did my work, I'd be fine, but it wouldn't be as fulfilling to me.
Makes a lot of sense. Can you talk a little bit more about your book on the history of the Supreme Court's Chief Justices? I would love to read it when I get a chance, but can you share a little bit about some of the highlights, some of the things that you are particularly proud of from the book, and some of the things that were maybe surprising to you?
Yeah, so the book is the Chief Justices. It's about the 17 men that have served as the Chief Justices. I try to make it accessible so that non-lawyers could grasp it and understand it. And I think I achieved that. My father, who for many years wasn't able to really read, he had bad cataracts. He had surgery several years ago, 4 or 5 now. And that was his comment. He said it really is, he downplays his intelligence all the time, but he was able to enjoy it. The surprising thing, or what I really learned in that process, was that the 230-something years of the court in this country, except for very small periods of time, the Supreme Court has really not advanced or given rights. Maybe the Warren Court, maybe in the New Deal era before the Warren Court. It's mostly been a body that reflects kind of a negative view on the individuals. And I wrote a law review article a year or so ago now, maybe it's 2 years now, time flies. It talked about the fact that the Supreme Court was not going to be the solution if you're looking for those things. Um, uh, and so learned a lot in that. What really triggered that book, though, was, again, this both undergraduate, but especially in law school, anybody that's gone to law school, you get little snippets of cases, even the constitutional law cases, the cases that could be hundreds of pages or 4 pages in your textbook. And you don't really spend any time about the time or the context or what was happening, who the players were. And so that was what really intrigued me and set that up. And then I had created a course, and my intent was to cover all 17 of the Chief Justices in a 14-week period. That got changed to something else because it had to fit into a academic syllabus type of thing. And so it's been a great experience. It's not a retirement thing. It's never going to make enough money for me to retire. It was a heck of a lot of work. I've thought about doing a second book just on Chief Justice Roberts. I've got an outline prepared, but honestly, kind of every time I think about moving forward with it, one, in this day and age, I'm not sure that anybody cares. Number two, not sure what would be the punchline anyway. And three, again, it's just it takes so much time and effort. It's that it would really be something I'd have to get the mojo to actually pursue.
Makes sense. That's a fascinating story around the genesis of the book. This has been a great conversation, Dan. I'll just like to wrap up with a couple of quick questions. Obviously, you've had a more than 30-year career on your rock tour, as you mentioned. But let's say somebody is just starting, maybe they're just graduating from law school, or they're a young associate. What advice would you give to a lawyer like that who's trying to decide, say, between a career path, going in-house versus into private practice at a law firm, and keeping in mind the context within which we are today with technology, with AI, with society, and just governance and things like that? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is to learn as much as possible, take on the jobs that people don't necessarily raise their hand to do. Those are some of the best jobs I've had in my 30-year career, and they've been useful over and over again. Because again, with in-house, unlike most law firms where you're slotted into, you're doing environmental or you're doing ERISA, whatever, when you're in-house, people think you're a lawyer, and so you can solve all issues. And so be as broad as you can, get exposure to as much as you can. And again, to your point, understand the technology, because if you don't, you're going to be behind those that do.
And final question for you, Dan. What is one question I should have asked you, but I did not?
I think you covered it. I'm trying to think of any question you did, but you did an excellent job.
Thank you. Well, with that, Dan, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time and insights, and I'm sure our audience will love this. So thank you again.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
The Litigator's Edge podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.